Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast. Tro, honestly, I love this kind of podcast that we're doing now. I think we got off course a little bit and we had a bunch of experts on it. We started talking science and people start like looking at us. What are you guys talking about this science stuff? So it's so great. Well, now we have a doctor back, but a patient, someone who's experienced this stuff. And I think this is so important for us to hear, especially now. So Tro, good to see you, man.
Yeah, listen, this person is somebody very dear to me. You've probably all seen her at the conferences. You've probably heard her from another great podcast that we love, Dr. Tony Hampton, Protecting Your Nest. And this is Dr. JoAnn. Oh, you're going to help me.
McManamy.
See, she has probably gone through more school. I'm going to do a informal kind of introduction. We know each other. We've chatted. And she is a 3-time PhD. She's been through more schooling than me and Brian. Brilliant, accomplished doctor. But I think the most compelling part of her story is the one of personal adversity, of overcoming adversity and overcoming personal struggle. And I think she inspires me. She inspires me, and she's had to navigate so much. So I think I'm going to stop right there.
And well, I can throw in, she's the social butterfly at all the conferences I've been to that I've seen her at. She's just talking to everyone and sharing her story. It's awesome. It's really cool to see. That inspires people.
Thank you.
So where did this all start? How did you end up on one after the other low carb podcast, kind of lifestyle oriented podcast? How did you end up here? Who is the person from before, and can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Well, the journey began probably at my 40th birthday, and all of a sudden the overeating caught up with me. And at that point, I was starting to gain weight. I went from, again, the low 150s where I am today, and ate myself up to 280. And what happened of the drivers of not being healthy? I would have to say stress was the most important, and it was the lead driver. I was overworking. I would teach classes from 7 to 11 at night, going in my car to different towns. And I had some great teaching assignments. And I just kept going, and I totally forgot to live a balanced life according to the values I didn't know I had. I was just working. And every year, a few pounds would come on and on. So by the time it was 1990, I hit over 200, 205, and then kept going up until about 2000, and then from then I just started looking at, I have to change, but I didn't know how, and I didn't think I was worth it. I achieved a lot because I didn't believe I was worth anything. Growing up, I had no positive statements. In fact, they were very unkind statements. I believed my only value as a woman was to be thin and beautiful so I could get a man. And I then armored myself. And then, I was very, very, very large. So I didn't eat right. I basically ate sandwiches for all those months. I didn't exercise because I couldn't move. I was so big. I would get out of breath, and just a lot happened. And as far as sleep, I didn't get any sleep. The only thing I did do well was maintain social contacts. So here I was, my friends all loved me, but I was a size 4X. and a size 4X, you don't look really, really good. So all of a sudden, fast forward to when I turned 65. At that point, I moved to Florida, and 5 months later, I was in the emergency room at Monroe Regional Hospital in Ocala, and I needed a valve replacement, and I needed a triple bypass. And I had a choice to make, and I made that choice right there. Do I want to live? And do I want to look at this and face challenges? And I chose to live, and I surrendered. And I'm not a religious person, but I let every clergyman of every faith that represented that church, little old Methodist minister, a Jewish rabbi, and everybody else, and I surrendered. And I was very calm before I was wheeled into surgery. And I came through it. My daughter was right there in the ICU, and she said, "You lived." And in her wonderful sense of humor. Yeah. So I lived, and that was my big change on that day, October 9th, 2012.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, that's powerful. And was before that, when you were on your journey going up and up, was there a doctor, was there anyone in your life saying, hey, we got to look at this, we got to help you, get a healthier lifestyle?
I was in Boston, the best, a really good city. No, it was eat less, eat less, exercise more. I couldn't exercise, I was mammoth. And eating less, it lasts for 2 weeks, and then it doesn't. And then I would go back to every time I had a feeling, I would stuff it down with food. And I never stopped eating.
Can you talk about that? You mentioned a lot of things here. You were great at maintaining social networks. You mentioned high stress, low confidence, low activity.
No sleep.
Maybe, low sleep. Maybe, what about the mental health? How would you describe your mental health back then in your 40 to 65s,
I said yes to everything because I thought it would promote my career, but it didn't. That was a very bad decision. I would have been far better to say no and then niche myself up to something that would lead, to a better position, or I would at least have my self-respect. I was just torn. And in the beginning part of that rise, I was writing a dissertation, commuting to the University of Connecticut from Boston, and I had that on top of everything else. So I was just, I look back at that life and I say, how could you be so unconscious? And I was. And then I woke up with that heart attack. Not that I didn't have a heart attack, a heart event, because I didn't have an attack. I just had clogged arteries and an aorta valve that was shot. So now I'm part cow and have a bovine valve, and life is better. Life got better from that point. So that was an extreme blessing.
So what did you do when you're laying there in the hospital bed? I have to make some changes in life. What were the big things that you said, okay, this is what has to go, this is what I have to do now?
I gave up a lot of work. In fact, I actually got fired from my job teaching at the community college, which I worked with for many years, and that was a blessing. Just a real blessing. And then I started to stop. The word no entered my vocabulary for the first time, and I just figured out to let other people help me, and especially my daughter, and that's that.
So what happened to your family during this time when you were chasing your career?
Well, my daughter was grown, and my mother, no, my family really didn't care, with the exception of my brother John. and my cousins. They didn't, they didn't value me. And I just had to say, I have to change the tape here. This is not true. And ask myself questions, really tough questions, like, what if they are wrong? What if they are wrong and I'm really worth something? And then the huge boat started shifting, and it shifted over several years. And each time I got another medical crisis, it shifted up. It shifted up to something more serious. For example, the heart was in 2012 when I was 65, but the diabetes came a couple of years later, 2014, and I saw that it killed my father. And I just figured, whatever it takes, which means a high level of commitment, I have to figure out what this is all about. I had never had an A1C taken before. It was 9.3 in September of 2014. And 3 months later, it got down to 6.9. And I was thrilled. I was on metformin, and I started to figure out what was going on. There happened to be a wonderful, it was called the A1C group here at the Villages. And I joined, and it was every Friday morning, and a non-MD endocrinologist led the group. He taught us how to predict what our A1C would be. And it was always pretty correct. We would do a whole lot of measurements, but he focused on getting the drugs that we needed in at the right time. After a while, I learned that, and 2 years later, or in 2017, I was off all medications thanks to him. But then I became more interested in diet. And I found this wonderful naturopath / chiropractor right here in the Villages who guaranteed I'd be off the medicine. At that time, it was metformin and glipizide. And I was off it by August. I started with him weighing 206 pounds. And at the end of the summer of 17, I was 175. And I love this man to this day. And from then on, things shifted. And then I found out I had diabetic retinopathy about a year later. And I met this other wonderful doctor who's now my retinologist. And he said, we're gonna halt this. And he did. That's when I took myself very seriously. Actually, I went from the stage of, extreme care, finding out as much as I could, to I've got to do what it takes. I've got to make some real changes. I've got to say no more. And I did. And I did. And that meant looking at a lot of things I did not want to look at. This is a culture where I live in Florida of eat and drink. And that's not for me. I really said no, and I don't eat the sugar. I am militant about my diet, except when there's potato chips in the room, so that can never happen. So I became militant in a real optimization mode. And that's when I started to looking at what I needed with my doctors, because I kind of took what was here and started demanding more things of them. Learning, I had to learn what tests I needed. I had to have open-minded doctors. And you know what? I keep finding them. And so that's where I am right now. And my house is optimized. There's no junk in it. You could drop in, I'll make you a meal. I focused more on improving my cooking, which was never bad. Now it's good. And it's just eating the right things.
Well, and you needed the right people. And I think it's funny that when you're talking, I could picture my brain remembering seeing chiropractors saying, hey, come to us and we'll get you off all your meds. And I thought, these guys are nuts. Adjusting someone's neck's not going to get them off meds. This is crazy. And I'm like, this is terrible, until I started realizing they're looking at lifestyle. They're getting you off the med. So doctors out there, and Tro and I know, Tro knows this. We've gotten hate mails from doctors because we call chiropractors doctors out of respect, because they've done a lot to help patients like you. And so we have to get off our arrogance a little bit and say, hey, if someone else can help my patient better than I can, then I'm going to learn from them, or I'm going to send my patients to them to do that. Tro, what's your take on that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm hearing like somebody who's basically having open heart surgery, somebody who's going through the medical rigmarole, really, and one intervention after another, and then really nobody has addressed lifestyle. I mean, it's like,
or stress.
Yeah,
stress.
exactly, or stress, or mental health, or any of these things. Your confidence, your self-worth, right? So everybody's kind of happy to open you up, crack open your chest, give you new things, give you medications. And then along comes this chiropractor who's like, wait a second, like, and yes, I relate to you, Brian, and your thought, like, oh my God, why is it that not that they can't, but like, why is it that this entire medical system ignored your care? And why does it have to be this wonky, crazy, chiropractor who's actually healing you, right? Why does it have to be that way, right? And so help me understand, like, so you go from, really, it sounds like a dark place. And then, through this adversity and tragedy, you kind of rely more on yourself, your self-worth grows, your self-judgment, and you seek out care more. And, I'm just trying to understand, you go to this chiropractor and he's like, follow me and I'll get you off these drugs. What did he tell you to do? What happened?
Well, first of all, he came to the diabetes meeting a couple of times. So I knew a lot of people that had hired him, and they had wonderful results. And I said, let's put your money where your mouth is. And he listened to me. He wanted to determine my level of commitment. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then he wrote up the right tests. And we saw where my insulin was. And he started explaining everything to me. And we proceeded from there. And then I was told to eat a low carb and a high fat diet. I've never been one that ate the high fat. I do love it. I do love bacon. But I tend not to eat the processed meats. I rather, have that be a little lower because it upsets my stomach. So I was eating green vegetables, and I was eating lots of eggs, steak and fish, and absolutely no grains and no dairy. That was his diet.
And this is 2014?
2017.
2017.
Yeah, I started May 19th of 2017 and finished in August of that. So it was 3 months.
And I will say that in 2017, I was practicing medicine in a big practice for about 15, 16 years. I had never once checked an insulin level.
Yeah.
Right up to that point.
Yeah, we checked an insulin level. And
who knows, if someone would have checked an insulin level on you 10 years before your bypass, maybe we would have managed things a lot differently back then.
Yeah, and it's interesting. That's the thing I insist on now, is the insulin check. And he got the weight off. And then I remember meeting my daughter at some place in Orlando, and she couldn't believe what she saw.
Well, I'm going to correct you for a second.
Yeah.
He didn't get the weight off. You did. He guided you, but you had to do it.
But,
right? He had a willing participant. He could be as great as he wants without you doing what he says.
Well, thank you. He sent me for the right test. We got the right information, and he's a very encouraging guy. I would meet with him every single week for weigh-in and some other biometrics. And through the summer, it came off. But I was so committed to doing that.
How quickly did it come off?
Uh, 206 to 175 in 3 months.
Wow.
That's the biggest weight loss. And then
And,
I stabilized.
and your peak weight was 280, you said, right?
280. And
And
that was, yeah, about 20 years ago.
got it. Okay,
So,
so you
here-
go. Sorry,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go.
Hold on.
I'm just curious. Sorry, Troy. I'm just curious. So, after you had your bypass, what did you do right after that before you started doing the low carb stuff? What were you doing in the interim in those years from
I was eating
2012 until
better,
2014 or 15?
but I was still eating carbs. And
I mean, were you doing Weight Watchers? Were you doing anything, or you just cut your calories down?
no, I didn't cut I just ate less. I still was eating 3 meals a day. And yeah, 3 meals a day. I started exercising. That's when that kicked in. I met with a group of women who exercise in the morning. I'm a morning person. And I mean, I could walk around the block when I started. And when I got up to a couple of miles, and I felt better. My mood was better. I got a stationary bike, and I have a rebounder, and I did that. I have a broken foot now. It's still, and I'm not doing the rebounder or the bike, but I do walk when I go grocery store shopping. That's about it for the fall. But I'm looking forward to getting back to it next month. So I did that. I also really quit a lot of my jobs, and my stress level was a lot lower. So we brought the stress down. We got the food at least started in the right track, and I was exercising, and I started sleeping, and picked up a new social group here in Florida. And from there, so stayed about even for a couple of years. And then COVID struck in 2020. I'd just gotten back from London before lockdown for London, and got home and said, oh my God, I think I was listening to Ivor Cummings or somebody, Peter Attia. And I said, I've got to learn as much as I can about what I can do, what nutrients, what tests do I need to have so that I don't get sick. I've got all these comorbidities. That's how I discovered YouTube in April of 2000. Probably led to me by Brett Scher, because he's the one that precedes you. So, and all I started to learn from podcasts. So I figured out, you got to get that, see what that vitamin D is, you know, look at your electrolytes, get your weight down. And so I had crept up a little at that point. I think it was like 180, and I lost 30 pounds through COVID, and I'm just bordering at 150, and I'm at a set point. I think, I know you don't believe in those, but I want to go down another 10, but none of my doctor says I have to. It's always, get that weight off, you know, but no, nobody critiques me on my weight. So that's
so I'm curious here. So, you know, it sounds like there was a huge wake up call in 2012. You get your life healthier, you surround yourself with a good peer group, you address your mental health, your stress, and some of that weight comes off. Then you do low carb kind of halfway through your journey, and then more weight comes off. Then you kind of double down, really just focus on metabolic health and surrounding yourself with the right kind of medical health and all that, and getting good information. And then you get to 150. Along that way, you know, what would you say you learned about, what would you say is like the easiest, if somebody's just starting, if you were meeting, you know, yourself 20 years ago, what would be the 1, 2, and 3 things to start doing? And then what did you learn about yourself along the way?
I learned, I would say, first of all, I wouldn't shame myself that would be the last thing. I would encourage that person, and I would explore through questioning what can you do to start? Would you take stress? Can you do anything? Can you look at your diet and just look at activity, any one of those, and start one thing, because it is a slow process. And you start where you're not overwhelming yourself. In coaching school, I learned the theory of stretch, risk, or die. Stretch is something you know you can do, but you haven't done. Do that. Gain the confidence of achieving something, and then keep going. Then when the person who's changing needs to up it a bit, then you introduce the comments of risk, things you know you might not be able to do, but you want to do them anyway. And then it just builds momentum, and you become fierce, and you know you can do it now. Doing difficult things builds confidence. And once they're on that train, there's no going off. So take somebody where they are, and then encourage them from there, because we're not all at the same starting place. We don't all have the resources or ability to understand research or find the really good doctors, given the limitations of our healthcare system. But you can do something. And figure out what that would be, and then encourage the person from that point. That's the real coaching, where you kind of figure out what they want. You start them with baby steps, and then you hold them accountable. And then you listen to all the excuses come through, and then you address them. But you hold them, you hold space for them. You hold them in your heart. You cannot, say tough stuff. Well, you're lazy. You don't know, and you don't know. You have to really listen and see where they want to move. They have different agendas than all of us, and start them on the path to at least being accountable for their actions, and be with them. No criticism, none. Yeah, I can't tell you all the things I've heard in my life. They weren't really positive.
Yeah, what did you learn about yourself during this journey? The lies that you were told that you realized were not true?
Yeah, I was worth something.
And this is at 65 or so, you start figuring this out.
I'm learning. Yeah, I don't have to run like a mouse I don't have to do that. I have needs, and I have a right to ask for the needs. And I had a right to ask for where I needed help. And when I realized it, it showed up. And it showed up through my naturopath. It showed up by getting better and better cardiologists. It's shown up in all ways. The right doctors seem to come to me now without much effort. They just show up, like you.
Yeah, I think part of the problem, and maybe you can talk about this, is it sounds like you've really gone through the medical system, right? And so can you talk about some of the hardships you faced kind of navigating the medical system? I mean, you mentioned now some of the good doctors find you, but, what was it like? What was it like being scared and,
And in a new state.
Yeah.
And, I didn't really go to the doctors up in Massachusetts because it wasn't a good experience. I was in denial for many years, as my friends will attest. I had some of these heart symptoms a full year before I went to the doctor. I don't do that now. I didn't like being yelled at by most of my doctors, and that is, that's not part of my life now at all. let's see, where was I going with this?
No, just the hardships.
Tell us about that. So you had doctors yell at you or
Oh yeah,
criticize you, raise their voice, things like that.
I had a doctor whatever me. Well, whatever, with attitude. I took him down. And then he was good. Actually, he heard me. So that was the first time I did that. That was back in when I was 60. And so I do that. And so I demand respect from my doctors, and I have it. And I have it with every single one I have. It's good. And then I've taken responsibility for my health. It is not their responsibility. It is my responsibility to ask for what I want. And the last example of a doctor that I had to fire was I had simply asked for an insulin test. The doctor went a little crazy, voices raised, everything. You're not diabetic anymore. Your A1C is 5.2. Your fasting glucose was 80 something. And she couldn't triangulate it with the insulin. And then she yelled at me, I'm not the doctor for you. And I just said, I guess you're not. And then got my wonderful Dr. Zadie after her, and life got better. I had a partner. The doctor has to be my partner. As I said,
I think we've lost that, and the doctors are stressed. I mean, I can tell you from the other side what it's like.
It's when you don't put the extra effort. Sometimes you get a 6-minute interview. If somebody who doesn't even look up at you, they're looking at your computer. And I don't hear this much, but earlier on it was that arrogance of the talking down. Well, what makes you think you need this test? You want to just strangle. But now I ask, and I get doctors that come back with, that's maybe a good idea. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. I have all open-minded doctors, and many of them are traditional. And then I have trope. So, yeah.
So most of them are open-minded.
Most of my traditional doctors, of course, are open-minded. Tro's the most open-minded.
Yeah, Tro, I hate to
picking on Tro.
I'm kidding. I know you. I can't pick on Tro. Tro's people and my people say that Tro picks on me. It's so funny how that is. But I think it's one of those things. But there's a respect. But the in all seriousness, Tro's very open-minded. He thinks a lot. He's thinking about different things. And
always thinking. And
always thinking, because we're thinking, how can we make our patients better? How can we? If it's not me, then who is it? Is it JoAnn Iflin? Is this an addiction issue? Is this a marriage problem? There's so much of that now, that we, this is why I keeps making this point, and I hope it's not redundant, but really, these scientists who are studying rats in a cage and giving them different formulas of rat chow do not understand that. I have 2 patients this week who are going through either a divorce, their wife's cheating on them, they have other stuff, a problem, and it's not that I say, oh, just eat this food and everything's gonna be fine. It doesn't work that way, right? Because how do you deal with stress? How do you deal with life? How do you deal with COVID? And I think it's so important. And the other thing I love that you said, I don't want to miss this point, is you said, when I heard about COVID, I wanted to learn everything I could to make myself healthier and to be more likely to survive that. Yep. Because I just talked to a lady yesterday. Her mom has been locked up for 2 years, afraid to leave her room because of COVID. What kind of impact does that have? And if you're living your life like that and you go, gosh, what impact are you having on the world with 2 years just sitting in your house watching The View? Right? The fear that people have, or whatever. Tro likes it. Yeah, there's other shows out there too.
Yeah, but it's really, I took the responsibility of finding out and making sure I got the tests I needed. And when I ask and I have good reasons, you know what? The doctors gave me the tests I wanted, and got it, knew what I had to do, and got to it, and lived without fear. I've not gotten COVID. I have been vaccinated because of my age. But the comorbidities, except for, the heart disease, the others are in check, I think. I would like to have a skinnier waist, though. So, But
can I talk a little bit about your medical team? Is that an appropriate thing to
that's an
do?
appropriate question.
What's that?
That's an appropriate question.
Okay. Yeah. Is it okay if I talk about your medical team?
Yep.
So one of the things you tasked me when you came to first see me, you said, Tro, I need to figure out a way to work within the system. I have a lot of medical issues, right? I need a way to work in the medical system. And a lot of that relationship building is tough, right? Like when you go to your doctor right now and you say, hey, I need this test. If I tell you, hey, this is a great test for you, as your primary or as somebody who's focusing on metabolic health or weight loss, right? And then you turn to them, they look at you funny. But sometimes all it takes is like a little phone call, like, hey, new guy, how are you? I'm the other guy, and these are we have a patient we're both trying to take care of, and these are the things we're thinking about. How do you feel about X, Y, and Z test? And now you walk in and you go meet them. And how did those interactions go? How did it go? Because I remember talking to your cardiologist before you ever saw him,
Well, I saw him because my previous left.
Yeah. Do you think it impacted the quality of that relationship?
Let me tell you how it impacted. First of all, my appointment got moved up from the end of the month to the beginning of the month. I saw him on, the end of October rather than the end of November. I got in there. I didn't know who I was going to meet, who was one of the first doctors that I ever trusted at first meeting. Love at first sight, trust at first sight. And I can just tell you so many things about him. He enjoyed the discourse with you, and my other doctors have to play in the sandbox well with you. That's my rule. And I've gotten a lot of new doctors. They're leaving you, Florida, and they're leaving at ages I didn't think they'd leave at. So I lost 3 doctors this year from the University of Florida. All my doctors there are new. You played really well with the other PCP, Dr. Zadie. My God, she got me everything you suggested. She accelerated the process within you, Florida, because you need somebody to work the system in there. Really a wonderful doctor. We did things. She did where you wanted to zag. She saw that happened. So
yeah, I think some of the times, you bring up so many issues about trust, and I'm sure Brian's seen this all the time. Like, it's tough to, I meet a lot of patients who just don't trust the system. They don't they see stuff.
And those were the good old days. It's way worse now, Tro. I mean, a lot of people are just getting abused.
Yeah. So trust is a big issue. And I don't know, Brian, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. And JoAnn, it seems like you've experienced it. The only way that I've seen to cultivate that trust, which fosters that medical care and medical connection and gets to somewhere positive, is time, empathy, and exchange of information. Exchange, not the delivery of information, the exchange of information. Brian, am I off here? Is there any other way to establish trust?
I think one of the expressions, I'm probably butchering it, but it's like, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, right? If you care and you go, look, I'm in your corner, we got this. You blew it last week, big deal. You're not a bad person. Let's get back on track. How do we, like those kind of things? They say, you never should have done that. Any of us who've done something wrong, you get into a car accident, they say, you should look both ways. Well, I didn't clearly, and I'm in an accident, so I can't change it. All I can do is go from here now. And I think a lot of us have had train wrecks of lives. And now we go, okay, how do I fix it now? Or how do we get on the same track? But I think, for me as a doctor too, if there's patients who are going to be antagonistic and we're going to I want to have a good relationship. I want us to be friends, and I want us to be, no, I'm in your corner, you're in my corner. Let's do what we can. If it's not working, we change tact. We find someone who can help, and I think it's that, like what Tro's saying, of reaching out to your doctors and saying, hey, look, here's why I think this test is important. Most doctors are reasonable people. They just never heard it. I just had an oncologist ask my patient, why in the heck is he so interested in the insulin level? It doesn't mean anything. And now my patient has an A1C below 6 for the first time in her adult life. And she's 76 years old. So it does make a difference. And here's why. And from an oncology standpoint, here's why it matters to me, right? So, and I think all this from a cardiology standpoint, it matters because I know when you were telling your story, I'm thinking the first thing I was thinking when you had a bypass at 65 is you probably had an elevated insulin forever and no one was following it. No one had ever checked an A1C on you, even though you're getting a bypass surgery. I can guarantee you the number one cause of why you got your bypass surgery. Right. And so you start realizing, oh, okay, maybe we need to start looking at different things. And I think it's education. I think we're in a really, Tro and I have talked about this since the beginning of the podcast, where doctors have lost the ability to reason. They've lost the ability to say, okay, what I'm doing is not working. This guy seems to be doing okay over there. The reason naturopaths stay around is because what they're doing is working. If it wasn't, they'd all be gone. People would say, hey, it's not working. I'm not spending all this money. I'm going to go do something else, just like with your chiropractor. So I think it's really important that we start having an open mind saying, gosh, we can't just manage everything with the drug. We have to look at the root cause. You know, that's why the engineers, and that's why I love people from different mindsets coming in, because in medicine, even now it's embarrassing to say there's stuff that endocrinologists taught me over the years that were totally wrong. Right? Just TSH matters. Nothing else matters. And I see people getting sicker. I'm like, their TSH is good. Are they crazy? Then we get their other stuff right and they feel great. And you say, well, maybe it's not just about the TSH when you see it enough times. So I think it's a big thing, but the ability to understand, and you know, I can speak to this a little bit, is my patients at my old practice, when I was seeing, 25, 30 patients a day, they became an enemy, really, because they want to be seen today. I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I'm not going to go home. I'm going to be here all night and I'm trying to help you and you don't want to be helped. And so it was a hard thing. And I think a lot of doctors are feeling that way because we go into medicine to help people. But now when we get sit and talk like this for an hour, how much can we learn about you right now that I couldn't learn in 6 minutes, no matter how smart I am? We've lost that in medicine. We've prioritized efficiency over connection.
Quality. Yeah,
quality.
Quality.
And that connection is I have to trust the doctor without enough time to make an accurate decision. I have to satisfy, and I almost know, I know intuitively, stay or go on the first meeting. So I'm learning to trust myself with trusting others.
Oh, I put out a tweet recently, or I forget, a post where I posted it, how to tell if your doctor is compromised.
Yes.
And it wasn't like this isn't like an absolute, must, it's just somebody asked me, Tro, like, how do you know if that doctor, isn't, exactly in your ballpark? And one of which is, do they know your family history? Mm-hmm. Do they know, can they address your A1C above 5.7 or a triglyceride above 150, right? Do they spend time with you, right? Because as Brian said, the root cause of some of these things, right? Our relationship to food, our, stress, our mental health issues, these are things that take time to uncover, trust and time, right? And the last one is, when you call their office, do you get a call center? I can't tell you. If you get a call center, right, how is that person going to be able to advocate for you if you can't even reach a human connected to that human, right? Like, how are you going to have a human interaction? And then I think the other one that's is you can just search this, guys. Look, find your doctor, openpayments.gov, I believe. You can find out how often do they get money from outside sources, right? And these are quick and easy ways. Doesn't mean everything. You can still get a bad apple or a good apple either way, right? I know great doctors who have, who have a lot of pharmaceutical and radiology and other testing companies come and give them lunch, and they're still great doctors. But these are quick and easy ways.
And I think then the other one that JoAnn brought up also is, if they refuse to order labs that you want tested, or they just dismiss it outright instead of saying, well, why do you want that?
Yeah.
Or I've said that in the past where people want crazy stuff, and I look, I'm like, I'm not going to know how to interpret that test. Like if you have someone who can interpret, they understand it, I'm glad to order. I don't care. But what happens is a lot of doctors, especially for HMOs, if they order too much lab, they get docked, they get in trouble. If they do too many referrals, they get in trouble. So we're in the position, Tro, where like if you need a referral, I don't care. It's like, well, let's get you over to the podiatrist being able. They'll say, well, you referred too many people to podiatry this month. You're getting docked in your pay, doctor. Like, but it's helping the patient.
Broke her leg.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's.
You know?
I've seen the craziest stuff, and sure, you know, that's why it's nice to be out of that model where I can order tests that I want to order, and I can, you know, if we need MRI, and then and I think the other great thing, really, and I'll do a quick commercial for direct primary care, is that, you know, the patient has that they can decide, say, hey, you want an MRI? CAT scan will show us what we need. Here's how much the MRI is going to cost. Here's how much the CAT scan is going to cost. Cash pay, and when you're paying for it, you're more likely to use the resources wisely. Troy, do you agree?
Oh, 100%. I can tell you when we have gone and we've looked at, you know, when we go to send somebody for a calcium score, let's say, to look at your heart so you can get to disease before you need that bypass, right? That the good doctor had. You know, if I send you to a university center with insurance, you will be charged about $800 to $1,200. That same test is typically done for $50 to $150.
Yeah.
You
In
know,
San Diego, it's $100. Cash pay, go in, get it. Right.
a carotid ultrasound, an echocardiogram, and an abdominal ultrasound, if you go to the local hospital, could cost you $3,000.
Mhm.
Lifeline screening, and I got no stock in Lifeline screening, does it for $150.
Mhm.
There's something to be said about going outside of the system. There's something to be said for sure.
And you know, the other thing that you brought up, JoAnn, is being able to fire your doctor. Say, hey, I hear people all the time say, I can't stand my doctor. They never call me back. They treat me terribly. I was like, well, like, could you imagine if I talked about my wife that way? I'd be out of my marriage at some point if I had nothing positive to say. And it's shocking because we all go into and Troy, you can speak to this. I mean, we all go into medicine to help people, but I think people just hit that burnout point at some point. And I never wanted to hit that point. I never did, but I was on the verge. But where it's like, I just don't really care anymore. Like, here you go. Like, you know, it's just like they're kind of going through the motions and they're not really invested anymore. They're thinking, I'm going to get through you to get to my next patient. And it's a terrible thing for medicine.
Yeah. And
So, okay, can you tell us, did you have any trouble with the low carb approach? Did you find you still, like, what did you learn about yourself? You know, I get it. You had this idea of like your whole life changed, your approach to stress, sleep, that changed, you lost weight, but then you go low carb. And what did you learn about yourself throughout that process?
I feel so well. I asked my daughter to give me some feedback. She said, your cognition is so much better. I observed that I don't take naps anymore. I feel good when I have a carb. It's, and I still go to the refrigerator every time I'm stressed. If somebody bills me wrong, you know, and I run to the refrigerator. The difference now, I open the refrigerator and it triggers me to ask the question, what do you really want? And that's usually, I just pour myself a water or a seltzer and I go down and sit and I don't eat and I don't have snack type things in the house. So, you know, that's what I do. I do that differently. But I'm still an addicted eater. I'm an emotional overeater and it's one day at a time, but I don't go to meetings. So that is different.
Sounds like you kind of know what you're up against, you know, now, like you mentioned, to have, you know, this addiction to food and emotional response to food and emotional and stress induced eating.
Yeah. And no, I don't do that. I move better. My goodness, I always want to get up and dance. A little limited with this broken foot, but that'll be over. And so I move better. I like myself better. I look in the mirror and I don't believe what I see. I look at that before picture and that's not me anymore. And it's really, you know, it's nice to get used to. It's a positive, it really is nice. And I feel so much better. And I want to go for, I charge Tro with keeping me alive till I'm 100. So, yeah.
And that's the thing, you know, Brian, we say this all the time, right? You know, this is the first time in medicine, right, where, like, look, our interests, you know, I've been wanting to be a doctor since 13. I'm sure, you know, Brian's like thought about medicine long before he even went to medical school. So my desire to help people has been a constant throughout my life. I want to say over 30 years, I've thought about learning about health, learning about diet, learning about nutrition, medicine, disease, right? Only the kind of the DPC style, retainer medicine style practice aligns your interests and mine financially, right? It's all great that I have this lofty goal, right? These good principles, but like at this point, we created a system, and Brian, you could talk about it, where now I am rewarded for keeping you alive another 40 years. Right? I am rewarded. I am, you know, like, so I think.
And keeping you healthy.
Right. And
for
keeping
40
you
years.
Healthy, right? Exactly. The healthier you are, the less you're going to need me. Right. The less you're. So my job is to make myself obsolete. I'm rewarded in that journey. And that's what you're paying me for.
Yeah.
You know, that I think it's such an ideal, it aligns everybody's interests. And I don't think that the HMO health insurance system ever did that. In fact, you know, they would make, you know, it would incentivize me to bring you back for reasons that didn't matter, right? Just to bill more visits, right? And Brian, you tell me if I'm wrong. Am I off here? You know,
well, you know, it just
depends,
right? It just depends. Like the HMO system, what you want to do is have a lot of the ones who saved me in my old practice were my healthy seniors, because I didn't have to see them all the time, and I get paid pretty well for that. But you know, a lot of times when they come in, you don't get paid a copay or anything. You don't get paid any extra to see them. So when they came in, people would be like, "Oh no, they're coming in." So if you had a senior who came in all the time, it was really devastating to your bottom line. It really would be. And then you also have young, healthy people that shouldn't be needed all the time, but they're, you know, neurotic or nervous or scared, and you see them all the time, and you get paid like $8 a month to take care of them, to provide all the care, and then you're spending a lot more on your staff. So yeah, it's a weird system, you know. And the PPO is like, they'll bring people back every week, because if they're getting paid a lot, they'll bring them back all the time and talk to them again about stuff where they don't really need to. And so there's a lot of weird stuff in medicine. There's you know, the coding. There's so much stuff where you start realizing, like, I see people getting coded for stuff that they shouldn't be coded for. For me, I'm not giving it to insurance anyway, so I don't need to upcode anyone. But it's a game. It's all a game, because like what Tro is saying is so true. The worst place you could get healthcare financially is the hospital, right? If you go to the ER, you know how much that's going to cost, right? So you have to have some coverage for that. So if I can avoid you from going to the ER, I've saved you a lot of money already. And if I can get you off meds, I've saved you a ton of money. If they're like these, you know, some of these meds, you know, are very, very expensive. So we have to earn our keep that way of saying, okay, if I keep you off of medicine that costs you $300 a month and I charge you $100 a month, you save $200 a month and you have Cadillac care. It's a no-brainer.
But it, you know, it's also the direct primary care is, I always know this man cares, gets back to me immediately. And it's just, it explains everything to me in language I can understand, not being a medical doctor. But, you know, just for an example of the big bills, you know, I had that angiogram, Medicare, $17,000. That's what they billed, $17,000. I've been running up Medicare bills for the heart and the surgery I had in September and the broken foot. I can't believe the amount. And I'm fortunate I have good insurance, but it's ridiculous.
But they'll just pay a portion of that. It's a game. That's why people who don't have good insurance are getting hung out to dry, because they're held for the full amount.
No, but it's but I'm in a good place with my doctors, because I tell them what I want. I just got a new PCP in the University of Florida system, and I think she's going to work out just fine. She's a resident, and she spent a lot of time with me, and she listened really well. And I now have a new youngest doctor. So I think it's going to be okay. So
Any major adversity along your low carb journey? Any major hiccups along the way? Anything that you learned about yourself?
Forgetting to stick to it. There are sometimes I just want to violate it. I don't ever go to the M&Ms or the sweets. That it's okay. I want a piece of bread. I want a piece of, and sometimes, you make up all excuses and none of them are acceptable. Then I get just right back on it. Forgetting to do it is my biggest, and it just has paid really good dividends. And then I don't explain it to most people because I kind of keep what I'm doing to myself unless they ask. I've been accused of being the diabetic Nazi.
Yeah, that's wisdom. You don't have to convert everyone to your religion, right? You get to kind of do your thing. If they ask, then you can tell them.
If they ask, I'll tell them. So I'm a little bit more controlled with that. I don't have to fix anything for anybody else. Just worry about myself. But somebody who did let me help him is my brother. I wish he were here today to say hi. He, in the last 2 months, has lost 10 pounds. And he said he feels so much better. And he said to me, "You have my permission to be a diabetic Nazi with me." I have seen all.
When you feel better.
And that was a very loving thing for him to say.
The other thing that you said that really hit me too, when you said what got better, cognition, right?
Yes.
In your age group, cognition is a major factor, and that's going to determine how long if you end up in a nursing home or not. It's going to determine a lot of things, and your exercise also is a huge determiner of remaining independent.
Have to get back to that very soon. I found so many other things in my life have changed. For example, my friends. When you're a very fat woman, as I was, I think they have an investment in keeping you fat. And some of my biggest criticism was their need to continue eating all the time. And my activities with my friends are now centered on other things like exercise, going for a walk, not around food. We have so many restaurants in the Villages, Florida, where I live, that are bad restaurants. I don't eat there. And so I will go to the movies with them, but not join them for dinner. I much prefer something I make for myself, where I really know what I'm eating. But that relationship was one that took me by surprise. They didn't want to be with me anymore. I wasn't anything.
Well, when people are smoking or drinking, they don't want to be around the teetotaler, right? It's not, it does change.
And it was, I was, spreading the good word, but I stopped. And, if they want, and it's so funny. I have, 4 doctors who will be listening to this podcast, 4 of my doctors, 2 of my cardiologists. My hematologist is fascinated with this. In my brand new PCP from Florida, they're all going to listen to this. I just have to tell them. And one of my doctors, my sweet cardiologist, wants to do before and after pictures with me to hang in the office, because he's on a weight. He's losing weight, and I just want to help him. I have to give back.
That's so great. You're helping your doctor, right? And that your doctors are open-minded. That gives us hope.
Listening. Yeah. And some of them are old. My newest doctor is 66, and she wants me to help her. She's listening to my Tony Hampton podcast because it's the one that's aired. So I told her to listen to it, and they want information from me now, and it's a wonderful partnership. And I'm never scared to go to the doctors, and it's quite a commitment for me time-wise to go to the University of Florida. It's an hour 15 to an hour and a half per appointment, per test. It's worth it. It's worth it. They give me more time than the other doctors. I've never been out less than a half an hour. So, yeah. So
These are really important topics. These are really important things. And I think, you know, the other thing, and you could attest to this since you were at the in Boca Raton, is look at people like Ken Berry, right?
Oh my God, Ken Berry.
He hung out there, right? He hung out there, talked to everyone. He was helping. He said, if you don't get your questions answered by me, that's your own fault because I'm here. Your own damn fault, he said.
Exactly. And I was lucky to have dinner with him on the first night. He came and said, is this seat free? And sat and talked to him. I just listened.
You know, him, Arthur Agustin, you look at, you know, Dr. Ben, like these are just great people.
Great people. I hope I can get to go to San Diego. I don't know. But I'm definitely going to Boca next year. So
awesome.
It's a short drive. So that was easy, but I have to give thanks to Doug and Pam and just all the resources that are now available to me. I joined the Society of Metabolism as a non-practitioner, and there's just so much out there, and there's so much out there that doesn't cost money for people who don't have the means. And so many simple explanations. And at that conference, everybody is so nice. And I got so much answered, especially by Philip Ovadia. And just wonderful, wonderful.
Can I ask you a quick question? How much has the meat and egg lobby paid you to come on here? How much have they paid you?
I don't even know who they are.
Did they send you the jet? Have they sent you the jet to come and tell people?
Land in my front yard, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
No lobbies. It's
Brian, did you get any meat and egg money yet?
I haven't yet, man.
No,
waiting.
Neither have I. You know, neither have I.
Waiting.
So,
but you know, I won't give to certain charities. Who sell their logos to Cheerios. And,
yeah, no, there's a lot of that, and I think that's how you know someone's sold out too. I think at some point you say, hey, let's just do the right thing. But I can say that you are an advocate. You are there, and that's what I love. Is I see you just talking to everyone, sharing what you're passionate about what you're doing, and that's really cool that you can have nothing to gain other than helping people.
I want to learn. There's so much to learn, and that keeps my brain going. You see, I'm trying to learn biochemistry. It's not happening, but you know, I've made progress from 0 to 1. So I understand some of it, but my life has changed. I can actually kind of look in the mirror and say, hey, I feel pretty. Oh, so pretty. It's just, I'm giving myself love.
Well, and you got that glow in your eyes and the smile, and you know, you make an impact on people, and that's a huge deal. That's why we're so glad to have you on the podcast.
Oh, this has been a dream of mine. So, you know, but life is so much better. And it is a series of decisions you make that you need to come first. And, but start where you can manage it. It's like going to a coffee shop. I remember giving this advice to one of my clients. Can you go into a coffee shop? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I do that all the time. I said, your assignment for this week is to say hello to someone in the coffee shop. You think you can do it? Yeah, I can do it. She did. And from there, she grew to meeting a man. That was her goal. Now with weight, you just take it from one of the pillars and start on it. The next one will kick in. It will build momentum like a big snowball going down an Alp. So
perseverance is so key. Tenacity, we call it, basically. That non-quitting spirit. What can I do differently? What could I put in place to make this easier for me? The idea of just not giving up and reaching out for help, I think, is so critical too. Like you mentioned with your clients, right? You mentioned with your clients, you know, I'm sure they could turn to you for help. So having a community and support around your goals. I mean, it's just, if you look at your story, this is so critical. You surrounded yourself with people who exercise, who support your mental health. You told them about your goals and what you want to do, and you advocated for your own self. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I see again and again, that people who are trying to lose weight, they focus on self-blame instead of focusing on, how do I make this easier for me? If willpower is your deficiency, and that's hard for you to say no to whatever's in front of you, That's fine. Deal with it. Face what your weakness is and build around it. You know, like if you can't say no to pizza, get low carb pizza. Like put it in place, you know, or get a steak, you know. It sounds like you have this no quitting spirit. I will advocate for myself to the end. I'll change my doctors. I'll get better advice. I won't quit. And you surrounded yourself with people who support you. And you really had a big paradigm shift. And I'm just, this story I know is inspiring. I know Brian is like, agrees with me. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, yeah. And I love it because, this podcast, even though we generally pay, don't you owe me a check, by the way, Tro? We'll talk about that first. But the big thing is I can have someone who's 62 years old or 65 saying, I'm too old to do that now. I can't do that. And it's like, oh, here, listen to this episode, right? And then you inspire more people to say, yeah, I don't really have a very good excuse. I didn't have a, bypass valve change, 280 pounds. And now you're out healthy and vibrant and having your cognition and your something that moves you. There's an old expression that says if there's nothing that gets you out of the bed or off the couch, then sooner or later you can't get off the couch. You can't get out of the bed because you don't have anything that motivates you. So for you to be filled with wanting to learn, wanting to do this stuff, it just shows that, because you want to help other people.
Yeah, I did. And it's not too late. I'm going to be 75 in 13 days. And I never thought I'd live this long. And to live with such a quality and have the people in my life who really love me and care and show up.
That's all good. Important stuff. That's really important stuff.
Unfortunately, the others have fallen by the wayside.
Oh, someone's after me. I'll be right back.
Doctor, good doctor. Can you tell us, how can people find you on social media? Thank you for sharing your story. First of all, how can people find you on social media, elsewhere? If they want to connect with you, share their story with you, how do people find you?
On Facebook, under my name, JoAnn McManamy. On Instagram, under Dr. Doctor with the period, McManamy on Instagram. And on Twitter, Dr. McManamy with no dot in it. So I'm finally figuring out how to use Twitter. I'm not really good at it.
Let me tell you, I'm the same way. It's like the cultures are so different.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got to say, thank you for sharing your story. It's courageous. I know it's not easy to share your story and kind of what you've been through, but I really appreciate it. I know Brian appreciates it. And I think the listeners appreciate it. We get so much feedback. Hey, we want real people again. And so we're happy that real people, because, the Ken Berries and the Brett Schurs and the Brian Lencius and Troke Asians, we're all great and dandy, but I think those stories and those struggles are meaningful. So we really appreciate it. Thank you to our Patreon, supporters. And this is for supporting this not-for-profit podcast. And Vic has to say, Doctor, you are a star. So, and we'll.
Oh, thanks, Vic.
Yeah.
I love Vic.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, JoAnn. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. We'll see you soon.